Hi, in this video I wanted to show you what we have created for handling action requests being added to the internal GitHub Actions Marketplace. We're trying to follow best practices, and that means forking over all the actions to a specific actions organization. And from that we have set up an internal marketplace where people can go to the marketplace and then search for the actions that we have enabled there. And then of course you get the question of how do we add new actions to that marketplace in a good manner, that we have security checks in there and as much automation as we can give you, of course. And from that came the repository with a workflow that does everything for you that I wanted to show you. So a user can of course go to the public marketplace, search for an action, and in this case they find a linting action for Ansible and say, hey, we want to use that. Can we try to run the checks in there and verify that everything is okay? And you can of course go to the public repository. All the actions need to be in a public repository anyway, and the first thing you do of course is checking out all the source code that is inside of the repository. And if they are satisfactory that you want, hey, this seems like something that we can use, we've maybe even tested that somewhere out, you can then go into the issues of GitHub Actions request, and this is the repository that we have set up for that. Create a new issue there, request a new action, we have a template for that, and it takes you of course through the steps of, hey, we want to use that specific action. See the repo here, jeez. And we need the user statement that you would use inside of an action just for easy searching when we parse all the text in here. And you could, for example, say, hey, we have a new action request for Ansible lint action that we want to use. We, of course, give some extra information as well. What do you really want to use it for? And we try to make everybody first, of course, check the internal marketplace to see if they have anything in the marketplace already that matches the intended goal. They can then submit that new issue. In the background, another workflow will already start that tries to label the team that needs to be aware of these issues. We try to include them inside of a comment, and that makes it sure that they get a notification for that. In this case, that team is tagging myself in this repository. So at least I now have a notification saying, hey, there's a new issue from a user, please go and check it out. Well, if I'm then the DevOps engineer making sure that we don't include dangerous actions, for example, inside of our Actions Marketplace, then I can go and do the manual review, verify there's nothing scary in there. But when I've done that, my first due diligence, and I'm okay with using it, I can then label this issue with the security checks. Only people who have maintained access to the repository or administrative access can set labels. So another security measure that this only runs when you really want these things to run. From the security check label, another workflow will start and will do all the security checks that we have embedded so far. For example, this is the first one that we run. We try to find the action name from the issue that is set up. We then fork that action over to a test organization, an organization that has specifically set up for that, and users in our production environment cannot get to that test organization. We also try to load the languages that are in the action that we use so that we can set up a CodeQL scan on top of the forked repository. And with CodeQL, we try to make sure that there's no dangerous code inside of the action source code that we use. After forking the action over, we can also enable Dependabot on top of the fork. That gives us more insights of, for example, vulnerable dependencies that might be used inside of the action. Additionally, we run a set of security checks, and we check, for example, does the repository of the action have a CodeQL workflow by itself? That gives us at least insights that the maintainers of that action are very serious around their security setup. We check if Dependabot has been set up, so all of their dependencies will always be kept up to date as well. So those are the sort of signals that we can see to trust, to build up the trust score for that action. And if everything has been completed, we cannot wait for Dependabot because there's no API that tells us when Dependabot is ready. But we still try to display all the results from all the CodeQL tests that we have done and the security checks that are in there. I have that example available because this is what the process gives back to the user. Hey, we found these specific results, we checked these things, and we ran CodeQL, the results were okay. You can go to the CodeQL run even and dive deeper into the results if you want to. And we give everybody the security checks that we've seen. We found no workflow files inside of the repository itself, so that means that they probably use a different CI/CD system. We don't have dependable configuration in the action. And we go from there, of course, trying to get more signals of how trustworthy is the action that people are trying to pull. In this case, we see that this action uses a Docker container. So from that means that we can run a container scan on that. We use Trivy for that. And in this case, no low or medium issues were found on that scan. So this one is probably for us okay to use. Well, after this first check, and you probably need to wait some time, we still want to include a link here that says, hey, please go and check if Dependabot already has ran. But you can only see that after a certain amount of time, and depending on how busy GitHub is on their side, it might take an hour. You never know when Dependabot actually runs. But after a while, you can then go into the action and label it again with load Dependabot alerts. That then starts another workflow file. That is rather straightforward. It tries to find the action name again, and then it loads results from the forked repository. Then it posts back that information into the same issue. It says, hey, we had a completed check for all the Dependabot results. In this case, we found 0 Dependabot vulnerabilities inside of the repository. So this is probably, again, an action that is okay to use. We give you a link back to the security insights from Dependabot as well, to give you more information of, is this okay to use? The next step will be that we then label it that, hey, the security engineer who has looked at this request has said this one is okay to use. All the security criteria that we had were met. We have some confidence in that we can use this one properly. Add another label on top of it, and that will then actually fork the action repository over to our actual actions organization so that people can start using it into production. And with that, we have a good, proper security workflow that's automated as much as you can. We still need to have a human reviewing the things that are happening in there, but at least now our users can request new actions to be added to our internal marketplace. I'm very curious to see what you think about this, so please let me know. And I'd be happy to answer any questions there. And if you have any ideas of things that we could add or extra checks that we can make, then please let me know.